to identify, if we get the same bits of information for new insurance claims, which ones may or may not be fraudulent, because they may fit the patterns that are identified when we do the initial analysis and training of our model. So that's the auto claims fraud. Now, if we look, we also have an auto claims new. This is the data we might have as maybe 147 rows here, where we've got the claims. So these are new claims where we don't know at this point whether they're fraudulent or not. But what we'd want is maybe the APL to help us identify that, so we can target which of these claims we should perhaps investigate further to maybe check out that they could potentially be fraudulent. So that's what, of course, predictive analytics and data mining brings to the table. So how do we actually make that happen with the APL? Well, there is an example that actually works on these sample tables available. So you don't have to sit down and write any script from scratch. If we go into the samples folder that we downloaded and extracted in a previous video, you'll see that there is an APL insurance fraud folder within the SQL folder. And in there, you'll find there are 3 SQL files. So the first one is called claims table types. And as you remember from previous videos, to actually work with the wrapper generator, just like if you're using the PAL, a regular predictive analysis library with HANA, you need to use the wrapper generator, and it works on the basis of having table types or structures of what the table looks like, not the table itself, just what the table structure is, rows and columns, and just column definitions and what type and name, etc. So you need to specify those when you're setting up your APL procedure. So what we've got here is the code that for those 2 input tables we were just looking at, we can see here are the table types that actually have those column names and their type, and saying which one is the primary key, for example. So for the new types, so in this case we don't actually have the is fraud, and we have the actual historical claims where we do know whether they're fraud or not. So the first thing would be to do is to connect. And we do that with our APL user. We have the rights to work with this and run that. Don't worry if you get an error on the drop. It just means that you didn't already run this previously. But if you needed to make a change and then rerun, it's quite nice to have the drop in the code, because it prevents you having to go and manually do it each time. So what we've done in this code is we've created the 2 table types, so we can actually refer to the structure of these 2 tables when we come to make our code. So the next thing we would do is we want to do the training, effectively create our model. And for that, there's a claims APL create train SQL file. And what this one will do is it basically runs the code that you'll need to do to actually call the wrapper generator, which is something you see for all AFL functions, whether it's the PAL, the BFL, or the APL, to actually build as a stored procedure that focuses on the structure of data we're going to work with, in this case the auto claims fraud data. So what we can see here, we've got the code, and you'll find more about it in the reference guide as well. So we're going to firstly actually create a table, which is going to be what we call our signature table. And this is where in this table, the signature, we're going to put in a row that represents all of the other table types that are appropriate to this procedure. Now, of course, that depends on which procedure you're going to work with. In this case, it's the create, model, and train procedure of the APL. So this, again, in the manual, you'll find information about which ones you need and which ones are input types, which ones are output. But it's very nice that in the APL you get a sample showing you the code, so you can just take this and maybe adapt it to your input data type. But a lot of the common stuff here will probably remain the same. So we've got that there. What we then will do is generate the procedure. So if it was already existing, we would call the drop. Otherwise, we would call the wrapper procedure create. Again, this is standard for the AFL, and this is the syntax we use with SPS 09 of the AFL. And then we're going to create for the APL area. So we're saying here it's an APL function. We want to call the create, model, and train. This gives the name of our user and the schema we want to put it in where we want to put the stored procedure, and then we actually give the name for the procedure we're going to create. and then we'll give as an input this signature table, and that then passes in all the information about the input and output tables that we're going to have. So we've now set that up. Let's actually go and run that code. So we generate our procedure. Of course, the first thing we would need to do is just connect. So let's connect as our user APL, and let's run this code. Don't worry again about that drop table, but what we should see now is that the wrapper procedure create ran, and we can see